Hi, I'm Renee, and I am very excited to be here with you today to prepare for the One Sweater Knit Along. We're casting on very soon, but before we do, there's a couple of really important things that we need to establish. The first is what size needles you're going to use, and the second is what size sweater you're going to make. We're going to talk about those two things today, and then after we officially cast on for the knit along, I'm going to do some more tutorials to just gently guide you through the process of knitting your sweater project, whichever it may be. I am going to do the One Cardigan pattern, but you can choose from any of the 5 One series patterns. So there's the original One Sweater DK, One Sweater Texture, One Sweater V-neck, and now One Cardigan. We have some fabulous tutorials about the One Sweater pattern, the original one, that are really in-depth looks at every stage of knitting that sweater. I'm not going to repeat everything said in those tutorials. I'm just going to give you an abbreviated version for the cardigan, and then I'm going to do a deeper dive into the things that make the cardigan the cardigan. For example, the button band. We're going to do a focus on the button band. But until then, let's look at how we choose the correct size of needle. Although it is tempting to jump right in and cast on with the recommended needles, every knitter knits with their own tension, which can result in a very different sweater size than you intended. Have a look at this. This is from a great post from Wendy Peterson on her Yarn Sub blog. Wendy conducted an experiment which gave 12 experienced knitters the same yarn and the same needles, and she asked them to knit the same size swatch. You can see the discrepancy between these two swatches. I'll post a link to the blog in the notes, and I recommend you read it if you will feel like skipping the swatching process. For an in-depth look at the process of swatching for the One Sweater, have a look at our second tutorial, One Sweater Swatch, How to Knit, Block, and Measure the Tension Square, here on YouTube. I'm going to knit my One Cardigan in this beautiful Lore yarn. It's the colorway Calm, and the stated gauge for the pattern is 21 stitches and 31 rows over our 10 centimeter 4-inch square in stockinette stitch blocked. Here is the tension square I have knit, and I have the advantage of having worked with Lore several times, and so I have a real good idea of what my tension is in this yarn. But if you haven't worked with the yarn that you're going to use, it's really important that you knit a swatch that is larger than the number of stitches and rows in the stated gauge. So we have 21 stitches and 31 rows. We need a tension square of 21 stitches plus a few stitches for our selvage, a border on either side, plus a little buffer. So I would recommend swatching with around 30 stitches, at least 30 stitches on your needles, and working until it's roughly a square. So that will give you a good idea of what your gauge is. It's not perfect. Many people find that when they're knitting over larger sections of fabric, they loosen up, for example, they relax into the project. But if you don't have an idea about what that gauge is, things can go awry and your sweater can be drastically rather than a little bit different from what you intended. A top tip to make your swatch as accurate as you can is to replicate the conditions of the cardigan or sweater in miniature. So, for example, the cardigan is knit flat, so you knit the swatch flat. If you were knitting a sweater in the round, you would want to make the swatch in the same way. knitting every row in the round. I am going to wash and block my cardigan, so I'm going to do the same thing for the swatch. I'm going to use a bit of lukewarm water and some wool wash. I'm going to gently swish my cardigan swatch around in the water and then gently squeeze out the excess water, roll it in a towel and lay it out flat to dry. Once your swatch is completely dry, you'll measure a 10 centimeter or 4-inch square. So through the center of the fabric, I'm just going to mark the beginning and end of my 10 centimeter square with some removable stitch markers, which make it easy then for me to stretch out my fabric and count those stitches clearly. If you have more than 21 stitches in your marked space, then repeat the exercise with a larger needle. If you have fewer than 21 stitches, repeat the exercise with a smaller needle. Once you have gotten gauge spot on, you're ready to pick the size that you want to knit. We have a video tutorial that covers this step in detail. One sweater size, how to select the right size to get the right fit you want, is the very first video in the series. My own top tip is to measure your favorite sweater and then pick the finished chest circumference closest to that. So looking at the second page of our pattern here, we have the chest size of the body that you're going to be fitting, and the important one for me and my comparison is the garment measurement chest circumference. This is the measurement of the actual finished garment, which includes all the ease that you will have built in. So matching this number to the size and circumference of your favorite sweater that fits you like it to fit is the key here. I am going to be making the smallest size. I'm going to be making a toddler jumper, so a 57 centimeter chest for an age 1 to 2 year old. And when you have picked your size, you have your yarn, we've figured out what needle size you want, and you've got your pattern, whichever one sweater pattern you'd like, you are ready to cast on with us, and we will see you next time for casting on and setting up the raglan increases.